What is up, guys? Wrestling Premiere is here. We don't see somebody work as hard to improve themselves more than Drew McIntyre. This guy got released and did lose the motivation, and if anything, he improved in every facet. Every way, the look, the intensity, the in-ring skills, the character. Drew McIntyre did a lot for himself in those 3 years away from WWE. It was important for his legacy and his career, and by the time they did bring him in, Drew was much more capable. It's important to mention this because it's a common story in his career. The guy's persistent and at times hard-headed, but that's what you need in this industry. Drew rose up the ranks of NXT and became champion, but his best work was yet to come. As a character on the main roster, Drew was limited to being Dolph Ziggler's guy, but he was strong. The guy was seen as a huge threat during this run, so while it wasn't all good, he was still in a great position. The push was coming though, and it was as a face which nobody really envisioned in the last 2 years. Drew McIntyre seemed like an odd choice for being the top face, but it was welcomed, and WWE didn't waste time seeing the fans cheer for him. His whole push in the lead up to WrestleMania was incredible. They went all out to ensure that people would see him as a star, but it was untimely seeing as it was COVID era. But he held it down. I do wonder how it would have worked if he got the chance to do it in front of the crowd. I don't think they would have turned on him. Obviously, some people like seeing title changes for the sake of it and all that. They get tired of the same person winning. But with Drew, his character was a bit different in the sense of he wasn't bulletproof. This was a breakout year. 2020 was a memorable time for Drew, but in some ways it wasn't enough because that time period in WWE is mostly remembered for the Thunderdome and the beginning of Roman Reigns' heel run. We did talk well about Drew, but it would become second fiddle in hindsight. His push deteriorated, and while he was a top guy, he wasn't as strong as he was in the previous years. Still, though, the faith was there that he would be the one to dethrone Roman Reigns. I was convinced it would be him. You know, you probably go back to my older videos, you'll be seeing I'm talking about Big E, Finn Balor, and Drew McIntyre. It just made too much sense, seeing as Roman never faced him in a title match, but it didn't happen, and he sang along with Tyson Fury after losing his match. And this is a point where Drew considered the lowest in his recent years. Drew's face main event run was over after that, so it was clear that he needed to redevelop his character. Super important because it was his only way back to the top, and he did such a great job with it. His character was very layered and deep, one of the deepest characters in the WWE. What helped Drew's case was his change from experience. He saw plenty of times he was screwed and reevaluated everything. For him, he knew that if he wanted to win the title, then it required him to be as dirty as all the others. He had a sense of bitterness and entitlement. This all stemmed from his losses and of course seeing that nobody had a consistent moral compass like himself. Sami Zayn learned what it was like to go against the bloodline. He had gone through hell and all of that, yet he was back with Jey Uso. He started associating with him. Jey Uso in particular was a big enemy of Drew's, yet everybody sided with him like nothing had happened in the past. If we're being honest, this whole heel turn is because of the bloodline. They caused so much struggle for Drew McIntyre and were the entire reason why he wasn't champion. It was such a good and simple story that showed you that you can change. Well, Drew, he felt like everyone else changed before his eyes. The guy became more selfish, didn't care about helping the New Day, and even had talks with the Judgment Day. But it was a slow burn that allowed for you to understand Drew McIntyre before the obvious happened. Drew finally turned heel and straight up told CM Punk that he prayed for him to get injured, and it happened. It was a great moment with McIntyre taking him out afterwards. Everything was built up to this very moment where he's like, I prayed for it to happen. And when he said that, I remember my exact feeling. I was like kind of shocked but amazed because he was such a good heel, a good villain in that moment. The timing of it, the way he said it, everything was picture perfect in that moment. And the heel turn was off to a great start. His motivations and intentions in some ways made most of this logical. He had his reasons to be upset. Nobody cared as much as he did about Sami Zayn and Jey Uso, and since everyone was out for themselves, doing things the wrong way, it's only natural for him to level the playing field. But Drew's biggest issue as a character was that he was too whiny and didn't know when to back off. He had this thing about making himself the victim, and that was the key to fully turning him heel. The guy just didn't forget to remind you that he's a victim and that everything bad that's happened to him basically never happened to anybody else. That's the core of Drew McIntyre. He brought a lot of dry humor, sarcasm, and more often than not would toy with his opponents, especially on social media. It was the best villain in WWE at the time, and naturally, you'd expect him to win the title, and he did for all of 2 minutes because the one time where he solidified him back on top of the mountain, his dumbass decides to boast about it in front of CM Punk, who was already bitter with Drew having the last laugh over him over the whole I prayed for it and it happened moment. And this led to the cash in. Great moment to show that when Drew should have laid off his antics, he decides to do the opposite and in turn cost himself the title. It's ABC stuff. It's basically his character screwing himself over. And since he was so far gone at this point, it was always going to be seen as yet another moment where he was screwed. Yet he fails to realize why and who actually screwed him. It was himself. This was an already solidified heel turn, but he went off the deep end. The story with CM Punk was one of the best in 2024, and it intensified from the moment it began, and from there, these two would want to kill each other anytime they were within distance of each other. It also allowed for Drew to strengthen his online presence. He would call out Punk on social media and throw some crazy shots. The heel work all around was just great. There was this image of Drew hanging out with Jack Perry, which was hilarious and also made this feud look like one that might be a part of real life. Maybe some elements of it were, but there was magic on screen regardless, you know. That wasn't my worries. As long as the TV and intensity was good, that's all I care about. It was amazing character work from both men and a highlight of their careers. Drew upped the intensity and aggression. Punk was able to match him, and it was some magic that both men haven't been able to experience since then. And one thing I dislike is how a lot of people made a big deal out of the bracelet. Anything in front of these two, whether it's a title, a bracelet, which is by the way a personal bracelet for CM Punk, obviously he's gonna have a lot of emotion about it. It feels like people are missing the point purposefully as it relates to the bracelet. It's not just a bracelet, it has meaning behind it. Man, if I was a wrestler and I had to rival like this, bro, I don't care if he stole my deodorant, which is, let me see, secret deodorant, bro. I don't give a fuck. I'm going after him. I'm gonna take it personally, just on the basis of him being my rival. Simple as that, ABC stuff. When you look at him from a storyline perspective, Drew McIntyre would piss you off. The guy complains a lot, plays victim, yet he's a low-key a monster. He's a bit scary, he's petty, he's all of these traits, and I understand why all these wrestlers hate him in storyline. This feud was everything that Rollins and Punk's story wanted to be, and I don't believe they will ever understand it. Drew's heel run peaked with an iconic Hell in a Cell match that was a blast to the past and showed that the Hell in a Cell concept could still be used well. It showed how devilish that Drew had become. There was moments that were brilliant, such as him begging for mercy right as the blood was drawn and pouring from his forehead and using that to his advantage. The anger in his eyes, there's so much passion and emotion behind that match. One of those battles that both men would be proud of and look at fondly. And we didn't know it then, but Drew's heel run peaked. The thing about it is the story was supposed to propel him further, and it did his job in that moment. He became a main eventer and the best heel in the entire WWE, but that night also ironically showed that no matter what he did, he was still not going to be the guy he wanted to be. For one, Hell in a Cell wasn't the main event despite being the hottest story in WWE at the time. And when it came down to it, The Rock's return, which meant as much as half of his next story, was the final shot on the show. And you'd think it was no problem, but then Drew returns and claims he's going after the Bloodline. The Bloodline was Drew's main rivalry and the entire reason why he became this guy. They made him into this guy. The entire reason why Drew complains all the time, makes these excuses, has become vengeful and angry is because of Roman Reigns, Jey Uso, Jimmy Uso, Sami Zayn, and Solo Sikoa. He goes after Sami Zayn, Jey Uso, but clearly the big goal was Roman Reigns. And we could say Hell in a Cell was a missed chance with it being the main event, but they followed by telling a story that is destined for Roman Reigns, the Bloodline Hunter. Man looked like a demon, systematically going after each and every one of them, but then he folds. He folds in numerous ways. He loses to Jey Uso before he even gets the chance to get his payback on Roman Reigns. It was an easy layup. An easy story to book with Drew being angry and holding Roman responsible for everything that's wrong in WWE, and add in the fact that the fans are cheering for him when he was the one who was wronged in the past. Yet they're booing him. The guy was basically a dictator in the company, and he had his chance here. You know, he had his chance to go after him, and in storyline, he was a massive bitch. Out here not going for his goal of taking out Roman Reigns. But this was unfortunate. The fact that this story wrote itself, yet this guy in storyline cowers into hiding and worries about Damian Priest. I don't know if it's a matter of WWE or Roman Reigns refusing to make it happen, but it was the match to do at that moment. Now, obviously, they don't have to do it at WrestleMania, but I just think it's unfortunate that the Bloodline Hunter story that they made such a big deal out of upon Drew's return was abandoned. They had this guy lose to Jimmy Uso at one point. Jimmy Uso, the guy who's known as Jey Uso's brother and Roman Reigns' cousin, the guy they can't book a bloodline-less story for. It's like asking Triple H to do a fast-paced storyline that's actually interesting and engaging. Maybe there's a better chance of a Jey Uso bloodline-less story than Triple H not starting every pay-per-view in the middle of the ring and welcoming everyone. Maybe. They really had him lose to Jey Uso and Roman Reigns' joint roller, bro. I'm calling them that just because they can't book him to be his own man. It's one of those things where WWE just let go. I don't know why they didn't care about keeping the momentum going on. And the moment they went to Priest, had Drew lose to Jey and seem more destructible, it meant the end of a big push. Drew was a massive heel in 2024. You could even say he was the wrestler of the year for his character work and promos. There was so much fire behind him, yet these guys were so inept and oblivious. Or it's some backstage reason, but there's no reason for them to do that triple threat match when Drew is right there. I don't want to sound marky or anything like that, but the vast majority of us agree that Drew McIntyre's position in WrestleMania should have been much bigger than Damian Priest. Priest is a former world champion, all that, but they couldn't be bothered to not do the bloodline. You know, they teased it a bit, and it made him look like a bit of a clown. Yap. He goes on the internet and tweets nonsense, and what once was a strength of his became a massive weakness because he's literally a troll. Tries to rage bait but fails to see he is as good as he says he is. That's how I see Drew McIntyre. And WWE's booking of him doesn't help things, because when I hear the name Drew McIntyre now, all I think of is professional rage baiter. Horrible precedent they set with him, because why the fuck isn't this guy winning every title in the company and reigning atop as one of the scariest wrestlers to deal with on the entire roster? Alright, I might have over-exaggerated things there. Maybe the world title. I don't think he should be winning every title. I'm just over-exaggerating. He lost a feud to Damian Priest, lost his RM presence that he had last year, and best of all, he was pitched to win the WWE Championship for Disgrace Palooza, but the guy to me doesn't deserve the title right now. He deserves it in general, but not for his current work. The Cody feud was a bit uninspiring, and it's a one and done thing, which wouldn't have happened last year. I think if Cody feuded with Drew McIntyre last year, they would have had a 3-match series, which tells you all you need to know about how he's booked right now. They just wouldn't have done it last year for certain. They've destroyed him as a character, and the best part about that is that he could easily be rebuilt. He's shown it in the past. The guy is resilient and always finds a way back up, but man, will I always look at Drew McIntyre in 2025 as a missed opportunity. I despise it with every core of my being, but I really dislike it because 2025 as a whole would have been a different year if Drew McIntyre was pushed as well as he deserved to be. There's still time to salvage it. He just needs to cross paths with John Cena, and if anything, him being the one that destroyed him at $30 Palooza would have been great and reminded everyone of what he was truly capable of, but it wasn't to be. Drew was not in a bad position, just want to preface that, but he lost that fire that he had last year coming off the CM Punk feud, and it seems like nobody seems to realize it except for himself and of course the fans on the internet. Do I wish him the best? Of course. It's just I feel like this Jacob Fatu feud they're doing right now is, again, wasting time until they do something else later on. I don't know what they're going to do with him heading into WrestleMania, but he definitely deserves a big singles match. Needs to be rebuilt to the way he was just a year ago. So yeah. Alright, what you guys think of Drew McIntyre's heel run? Please comment down below. That's the first video. Make sure you hit the Future Shock DDT on the like button, press the claymore on the subscribe button. Peace. I'm out.